Coming up, as I think about the two assassination attempts, I realize that there are questions, too many questions, and I'll spell out the implication of that. General Michael Flynn joins me. He's former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. We're going to talk about corruption, political targeting at the highest levels of the intelligence agencies. By the way, there's also a new film, Flynn, and I'll talk briefly to the director, Scott Wiper. Hey, listen, if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify, please subscribe to my channel. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
Guys, I want to begin with an announcement about the film Vindicating Trump. You've seen, I hope by now, the trailer. It's well, if I say so myself, a really good trailer. And but now, today, the movie theaters are going up on our website. We already have about close to 500 theaters already locked in. It's all up on vindicatingtrump.com. And don't wait. Move quickly. Line up your family. Line up your friends. Make plans to go opening weekend. That's not this weekend, but next weekend. Friday, September 27th. Saturday, September 28th. Sunday, September 29th. Make plans to go. Round up your gang and get the tickets off vindicatingtrump.com. It'll connect you to all the movie sites. It connects you directly to the theater. So all you do, you put in your city, you put in your zip code, boom, the theaters around you will come up. Now, if you don't have a theater really near you, don't panic. Why? Because this up on the site right now is our kind of first round of theaters. By the way, there's a lot of theaters. It covers a lot of the country already. But more theaters are going to go up every day, all the way through probably next Monday or Tuesday. So, in other words, don't give up hope. Just keep checking the site, vindicatingtrump.com. Look to see if there are new theaters added that will enable you to go. And gee, in many cases, it'll be right there, your local theater chain right down the street. But in some cases, you may have to drive 30 minutes. I'm trying to make it such that pretty much everybody who wants to see the movie in the theater is going to be able to do it. And also remember, this is a normal theatrical opening, so there will be 4 showings a day, a matinee, an afternoon showing, as well as an evening showing. So it's not like it was with 2,000 Mules. In our last couple of movies, we had to do a kind of a post-COVID buyout strategy. That is not our strategy this time. Our strategy is normal theatrical opening. So support us in the theater. You'll be glad you did. This is a heck of a film. People who have seen it are blown away. It's also highly entertaining, and it has a very unique one-on-one with Trump. Trump is sort of, you've never quite seen him before. I think you'll agree when you see this film. So, and there's an underlying argument that is, I try to do this with all my films, not to sort of regurgitate what's already out there. I start with something that's out there. So, for example, there are people who say things like Republicans, who'll say things like, well, you know, I don't really like Trump, but I like his policies. Or you'll have people who say, I just wish he would shut his mouth. What they're looking for is a kind of modified Trump, a rehabilitated Trump, a new and different Trump. And I make the case in the book and in the movie. And by the way, you can pre-order the book on the website. Same site to go to, vindicatingtrump.com. At the bottom of the page, you'll see that a couple of tabs: order from Amazon, order from Barnes & Noble. But I make the point that we don't need to remake Trump. We actually need to remake our understanding of Trump. We need Trump as is. It may be that Trump is not the best guy, the best candidate for every time in American history, for any sort of environment, but he is the right guy for this environment. In this dangerous situation we find ourselves in the country, it's my view that Trump, and only Trump, is the guy that we are looking for. So, vindicatingtrump.com, go for it. Now, I'm going to have General Michael Flynn coming on, talking about the 2 assassination attempts. And I just want to offer a couple of thoughts as a sort of prelude to my conversation with him. And he goes into it in some detail. Now, I think that when we look at these 2 assassination attempts, there's just question upon question upon question. I'll start with the second one. How did this guy Ukraine fanatic or whoever he is, how did he know that Trump was going to be there in Florida at Mar-a-Lago on the golf course at that time? Who told him? Is he just a guy who's been camping out for days? No, we know he's been camping out for hours. And that's my second question. How is it that you can camp outside of Mar-a-Lago, a property under scrutiny and surveillance? How can you do that without being detected for so long? What's going on here? And how is it the case that you can have a second credible attempt after the first one, which should already have been taken as a warning? And now we go to the first attempt. And here we have questions abound. First of all, they seem to have known about that guy. He was walking the grounds. He's patrolling the site. He even gets up on the roof and people tell the police. Why wasn't Trump immediately pulled off the stage? That didn't happen. A second point, which I've made on the podcast, but I'll make it again. If you watch the counter sniper, the guy who ended up shooting Thomas Crooks, he seems to have had Crooks in his sight beforehand. He doesn't have to re-aim. He doesn't have to look around. Where's the guy? No, he knows where he is. He's got him in his sights. All he has to do is pull the trigger. And yet he lets Crooks get off some shots. Bam, bam, bam. Not just one, multiple shots. And then, bam, he gets him. What's that all about? We were told initially, and then there was a backtracking. Well, Secret Service policy. We don't just go out, shoot people. We wait for... Is it really Secret Service policy to wait for assassins to shoot first? And then you shoot back? Really? So all of this, some of it can be attributed just to sort of DEI or to incompetence. I mean, these plump female agents, bouncing around, unable to properly block Trump, not properly able to competently wield their weapons. The woman can't find her holster, and then she pretends to be looking around and waving her gun. This is all straight out incompetence. I can understand that part of it, but the rest of it raises bigger questions. Namely, are there people who are somehow powerful figures in the U.S. government? We know that the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration, views Trump as a threat. They've been saying it. He's a threat to democracy. He's a threat to the country. He must be eliminated. Some people have even used the word exterminated. So you've got this poisonous rhetoric. We also know that the DOJ, we know the Department of Homeland Security, all these agencies have been involved in trying to get Trump. Get him criminally, lock him up. And now, so these are the same people that Trump is somehow reliant on. The Secret Service is itself part of the executive branch. So Trump relies on these guys for his security. So something is really amiss here and needs to be addressed. We need to investigate more who's behind this, who had knowledge. Did someone know about Thomas Crooks, know about this guy, and just decided to look the other way? What's really happening there? And then the second point, I think equally imperative, what can be done to make sure this doesn't happen again? Because if it's happened twice, there's a decent chance it will happen a third time, or at least will be attempted a third time, and maybe a fourth. So all of this tells you that the country, that just as Trump is in danger, I think he's become now an emblem, a metaphor for a country that is in danger. The country is facing a kind of assassination attempt. We need to do what we can to thwart it. Did you know there's nearly $1 trillion of infrastructure and pandemic funds yet to be spent? That's right. There's a massive amount of money that the lame duck administration is pushing hard to spend in their last few months. If the president can push these funds out, we could see another prolonged inflation surge, just like during COVID. Not good. I'm sure you remember the terrible effects that high prices had on most Americans. But, there's hope. A surge in prices can be beaten. A gold IRA from Birch Gold Group can be an inflation hedge for your savings in uncertain times. To see how to protect your IRA or 401k, get your free information kit on gold by texting the word Dinesh to 989898. Birch Gold makes it seamless, easy to roll over your retirement account while preserving your tax advantage status. Do what Debbie and I have done. Don't wait for the president's spending spree to tank the dollar further. Protect your financial future now. Text Dinesh to the number 989898 for your free information kit about gold from Birch Gold. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the increasing cost of health insurance? Have you had enough of not having control over your healthcare dollars? Introducing ShareRight. It's healthcare done the right way. At ShareRight, you're not just a number, you're part of a caring community. Forget about paying excessive premiums. With ShareRight, you stand to save 30 to 50% compared to health insurance. So think about what you could do with all those savings. But it's more than just savings. ShareRight ensures you have access to the care you deserve precisely when you need it, from routine checkups to unexpected emergencies. With ShareRight, your healthcare is their top priority. Empower yourself today. Take control of your healthcare costs. Visit shareright.org/Dinesh to learn more. See how much you can save. Visit shareright.org/Dinesh. That's shareright.org/Dinesh for healthcare done the right way. Guys, I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast the director of the movie Flynn, the movie that is based on Michael Flynn's life and his career. It's Scott Wiper, and you can follow him on X at Scott Wiper USA. The website, of course, flynnmovie.com. Scott Wiper is an American filmmaker, grew up in Granville, Ohio. He studied at Wesleyan University, also continued his studies and career in Paris. He's made a bunch of films: Captain Jack, 1995, The Big Ugly, 2020, The Condemned, and Flynn is his first documentary film. Scott, welcome. Thank you for joining me. It looks like you decided to pivot into the documentary space. Why did you do that, and why this particular topic for your first documentary film?
Well, thank you for having me, Dinesh, and thank you for promoting the film. For me, the General Flynn story had to be told. And I was coming from, I guess another side. It wasn't until Donald Trump came along that I was a California Democrat. But I think probably when 2020, all the things started happening, I got to the point where this just can't stand. So many things, and you've touched on many of the things that got me in your great movies. But in 2020, I just couldn't sit there and write an action movie or a thriller. I felt like I had to do something, and that path of like, what can I do with my filmmaking skills to maybe move the needle, led me to General Flynn. And I approached it just like, as far as story structure, I said, this has everything. And what I found was, like every screenwriter or movie director, producer, you have your hero, but then you're searching for a villain. And I couldn't believe the villain we discovered. And it's an entity, right? It has many names, but and I think that why the General Flynn had to be told for me, and I think for most of the Hollywood crew that joined me, was that if you understand the General Flynn story, it's a foundation, it's a starter kit that is very human, and it allows you to see, it prepares the mind to accept other atrocities and evils that are out there, because people just can't seem to understand, whether it be the shots or the pharmaceutical industry or Hollywood at large, or our own government, especially the FBI, that true evil exists.
You said a bunch of things here that really get me thinking. One, of course, is that a good documentary is always a story. In that sense, nonfiction filmmaking is exactly the same as fiction filmmaking. It needs plot, it needs narrative, it needs a hero, it needs a villain. And what you're saying is that that's what makes film successful, is the telling of the story. Now, you also alluded to the fact that you don't have, in this case, a conventional villain, a single bad guy showing up on the scene. You have a regime, you have a system. Describe that system as it is sort of depicted in the film. How would you put your finger on it? Is it a combination of things? People sometimes say, well, you guys are just making conspiracy theories. How does the film deal with this issue of who the real villain is?
Well, at first I was instinctively searching for a person in the truth timeline. Now, just from before you start going through all 100 hours of interviews, and I'm thinking John Brennan, Jim Clapper, Jim Comey. So I'm thinking the intelligence community. And And of course, but then in this film, you see that there were rhinos, as we call them, or Republicans who are part of the uniparty, globalists. So it became so, when the editors, there's a big team of editors, I would do these like beat sheets, and I just started referring to it as the monster villain, because we were discovering who the villain was as we were going through 100 hours of footage. And so I just gave it a term so we could communicate. But it is the establishment. And of course, in that we cover the CIA, we cover the FBI. You can kind of see who General Flynn went after, and let's just say that was his duty, right? He was going to audit the intelligence agencies, and he was going to take a deep look into it. And in the movie we cover, he had a meeting, he sat down with all the top people of the CIA while it was President-elect Donald Trump, and Mike Pence was in that meeting with him. And then he sat down again once they took the White House. So you can kind of see what beehives he was kicking. And, that is kind of why the question you asked, right? That's the proverbial question. Who's they? They are the globalists in my mind. That's my opinion. They are those that protect the Federal Reserve and the central banks. They are the military industrial complex that is now the pharmaceutical media complex as well. So it's such an elusive they, who is the establishment, that it kind of takes that's why I feel the film is a starter kit, because if you can't defeat an enemy until you all agree that it's there.
Exactly. And here's my question about Flynn. I mean, here's a guy who is a Boy Scout, a dedicated guy, a patriot, someone who puts his country first and foremost. He walked into this minefield. They were trying to get him. They were trying to trap him. Oh, Mr. Flynn, may we just sit down and an interview? It's going to be very genial. Of course, we're going to be recording it and so on, but don't worry about it. So they were laying a trap for him. My question is, and you could ask the same question about Trump. In the beginning, was Flynn taken, in a sense, by surprise because his goodness makes him somewhat naive to the depth of the problem he's dealing with? As I say, with Trump, it seems that Trump knew that there was a deep state, an emerging police state, but maybe even Trump didn't realize how bad it was, how, you think you're at the ground floor of the elevator and you realize, oh no, there are 2 floors below me. My question is, you seem to have realized that in making the film. When did Flynn realize it?
Well, it's interesting. He's a great man. In a casual way, I'd say he's just a great guy. He's a wonderful person to spend time with, and that hit the whole film crew and he's incorruptible, right? And there is a quality, and I'll quote one of his brothers, a Boy Scout quality, and I mean that in the highest the highest respect. And I ran into, military men as high as general, other people, and they'll say, well, maybe I'm just talking because I made this movie, right? Well, maybe he ran into Washington, D.C. too fast. And they probably don't know him personally. But, and that's a common opinion I have from outsiders who may have military time. But what I discovered in the character of the man is that he's someone that runs in. He is a war fighter, right? So when he retired from the military, yes, there's a brief vacation with his wife, Lori, and spent some time with the family, but he jumped in. And that is one of his greatest qualities. Is many of us in all lines of work suffer from analysis paralysis, right? Sometimes we do it oh, what movie to make next, right? Well, I really admired this quality of he just jumped right in to advising 5 different presidential candidates who were not Bushes or Clintons. And one could say, well, did he know? Did he Well, of course he instinctively knew, because he's a war fighter. This is a man who's been in active combat. He's our highest ranking military intelligence officer at one point. I think he knew, but it's not like it could be as evil as one could imagine, and he's still going to run into that burning building.
Amazing. Tell us about the film. It's called Flynn, and how can people see it? Where should they go to watch and share?
Flynn-movie.com. And I'd ask all your viewers to text that to as many people, because it was a miracle. And on that, as soon as you type in that, you'll see Amazon and YouTube TV, Salem, as well as places to get the DVDs. But it's a lesson for anyone in making films. You've been a pioneer in redefining distribution. And at Flynn-movie.com, it instantly comes up, every icon, and then you just tap what you prefer. Most people go to Prime Video, but Flynn-movie.com.
Good stuff. Guys, I've been talking to Scott Wiper, the director of Flynn. Follow him on X at Scott Wiper USA. And as he mentioned, the website, Flynn, Flynn, Flynn-movie.com. Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you, Dinesh.
You asked, and MyPillow listened. They're finally bringing you the most requested offer ever. Right now, you can get the queen size premium MyPillow for just $19.98. Wow. MyPillow is made with patented adjustable fill. It adjusts to your exact individual needs, regardless of your sleep position. It helps keep your neck aligned and holds its shape all night long, so you get the best sleep of your life. But that's not all. Get the 6-piece kitchen or bath towel sets, just $25. The brand new mattress topper as low as $69.98. The famous MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $25. And there's so much more. The number to call, 800-876-0227. Again, it's 800-876-0227. Or go to MyPillow.com. When you use promo code Dinesh, you get big discounts on all the MyPillow products, including the premium queen size MyPillow, just $19.98. That's the lowest price ever, so don't delay. Order today. Go to MyPillow.com. Don't forget to use the promo code. It's DINESH, Dinesh. With a new movie coming out, guys, I'd like to invite you to join my Locals channel and become an annual subscriber. I post a lot of exclusive content there, including content that's censored on other social media platforms. On Locals, you get Dinesh Unchained, Dinesh Uncensored. You can also interact with me directly. I do a live weekly Q&A every Tuesday. No topic is off limits. I've also uploaded some cool films to Locals. I've got Dinesh's movie page up there. 2000 Mules is up there. The film from last year, Police State, some other films. And of course, you know about the new film, Vindicating Trump, coming out soon. Hey, if you're an annual subscriber, you can stream and watch the movie content for free. It's included with your subscription. So check out the channel. It's dinesh.locals.com. I'd love to have you along for this great ride. Again, it's dinesh.locals.com. Guys, I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast a genuine American hero, General Michael Flynn. He served more than 33 years of service in the U.S. military. He's current chairman of America's Future. His military career culminated as the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency and as the nation's highest ranking military intelligence officer. We're going to be talking also about the new film, or the relatively new film. It's called Flynn. It's based on General Flynn's life and experience. The website, Flynn, Flynn movie.com, Flynn-movie.com. You can follow General Flynn on X at Gen Flynn. General Flynn, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I thought I'd start by just asking you, we have seen now not one, but two assassination attempts, and credible ones. I mean, people either getting a shot off or being right in the vicinity of Trump with weaponry. What does this tell us about where we are as a country? This is not normal American politics, is it?
Yeah, this is not at all. And in fact, I would suspect that we are going to see additional attempts on President Trump's life because of the vitriol from this police state that we are currently living within. And I think that it was right for the Trump campaign the day before yesterday, I think, put out like 20 different statements about things that the people on the left have said. People can go look at that on either on True Social, and I know they posted it on X as well, and it's out there. These kinds of statements from the White House, from President Biden, all the way on down to other political leaders within the left, within the Democrat Party, just tells you everything that you need to know about the state of play in the United States of America and in the political sort of scheme that we are involved in right now as we go into this presidential election. The assassination attempts, and for people so people know a little bit more, about my sort of knowledge about this. So I had, as a national security advisor, I had 32 Secret Service agents that protected me. So I was a protectee, and I also studied the Secret Service, and I sat down with them for the protectee detail for the President of the United States during the transition and then going into the White House. So I have pretty good knowledge about how they organize. They have a what's called a body team, and then they have an inner security team, which is supposed to have eyes on, and they're a little bit further away, but they do reconnaissance of the area surrounding wherever the president's at, whether it's at a golf course or at a rally. And then they have an outer perimeter team, which is usually made up of local law enforcement. So I understand the system and the structure very, very well, intimately, actually, Dinesh. And I think what we have, it is more clear to me now, especially after this second attempt, that there is a leak inside of the system somewhere. Now, that's very difficult to determine, whether it's Secret Service or there's something called an interagency task force that deals with, in this case, President Donald J. Trump, who's also he's the candidate, right? But remember, every president, which Trump has been, gets Secret Service anyway. They get it as a lifetime service. So there's that. And then you have, as a candidate, it's beefed up. About a month ago, I understand the campaign reached out, did a request to increase his security because of the first assassination attempt, and that increase was denied. I understand that was denied, which is, just mind-boggling to me. After one assassination attempt that almost turned his head into red mist. So, and then when I start, you take a step back from all this and you go, okay, what do we know? Well, we know that the FBI had to admit that they had this recent guy on their radar. And we also know that some of the crazy things that happened post the first assassination attempt, where they destroyed the body of the shooter, should not have been done. That body of that shooter should have been continued to be held on to and examined. I mean, you don't know, did they examine him for drugs? There's all kinds of questions that surrounded that. Now this guy's alive. I appreciated what Ron DeSantis did to take some level of jurisdiction, which he definitely has down there in Florida. And the thing that blew me away was that both of these shooters or assassins are in BlackRock commercials. And the one guy, as I've gotten to see this second shooter, this guy is all over Ukraine, and he's all over all kinds of other things, right? So the fact that the lead agent in charge of this investigation in Florida, he's a special agent out of Miami, he is totally anti-Trump. He was told before he took that job he had to scrub his social media posts about all the anti-Trump stuff that he had. So this is the kind of stuff, this is the deep state, this is the police state that we are involved in, for your audience. So this guy is now in charge for the FBI, but the FBI had to admit that this shooter was on their radar. So the fact that he was on their radar means that he's on the CIA's radar, because there's an interagency task force effort that swirls around these types of individuals. And the fact that this guy was over in Ukraine and he was involved in some level of training, that's what we know now. What other things was he involved in? Was he being used as a conduit of intelligence support? Was he being used as a conduit to transmit information? Is he being used by some other part of our government? I mean, these are questions that are going to have to be dug into deeply in an investigation, and the investigation should not take, in this guy's case, because he's alive, the results of this investigation shouldn't take more than about 30 days. And they ought to come out and tell the American people, here's what we know. Certainly, Trump should be getting fed every day what they're learning. And the guys around Trump, the lead agent that supports Trump, the body team that is the closest personal security of him, they ought to be on edge every day now. So no matter what is happening, because I won't get into the details of it because there's some other reporting about potential bomb in a vehicle, and we don't know what the results of that. We don't know if that's real or not, but that's being reported in good media outlets right now. So to take a deep breath and step back, you almost have to say to yourself, are we living? It is definitely surreal. You couldn't write about this in a fiction novel. This is the United States of America. We have such vitriol coming from a one side of the aisle. I mean, even I think it was a day or two after the White House spokesperson, made the comment in a question, and this is after the second assassination attempt. She made the comment that President Biden stands by his comments about Donald Trump being a threat to democracy. The threat to democracy that exists right now is the lack, it's not just these assassination attempts, it's the lack of trust by the American people in the government that is supposed to protect us. I would say that the lack of trust in the FBI, now the Secret Service, because the Secret Service, demonstrated a level of failure after the first attempt, and now another one after this one. I mean, it's kind of like, guys, don't you get it? And it's not just the Secret Service, the FBI, it's the intelligence community, it's the Department of Defense, it's people in the White House, it's the State Department. I mean, we look at what's going on around the world in Eastern Europe or the Middle East. For those that don't know today, breaking there's another attack. It appears probably by the Israelis using these walkie-talkies. Yesterday it was the beepers. Now it's the walkie-talkies. So there's a lot happening around the world, and much of what is happening around the world is happening because there is a vacuum of leadership here in the United States, because they are so worried about one guy becoming president of the United States again. I swear, Dinesh, to your audience, that there is so much energy, negative energy, that is being placed against President Donald J. Trump because they fear him getting back in charge. And I know Trump said this because Bobby Kennedy said it very recently, and maybe yesterday or 2 days ago, that, and I know because Trump has talked to me about this, but I've never said this before to anybody, but Bobby talked about it publicly, and so I feel confident saying it. Trump knew going into the White House the first time, and I talked to him about this after I had gotten uncoiled from my mess. He and I talking. He knew going in that it was like new to him. Washington, D.C. was not a familiar territory. It was not familiar terrain. It was not terrain that he was used to. So he had forced onto him by a lot of the people in the GOP establishment, this is what you're going to do. This is how you need to act. And he found himself having to fight through that. They now fear Trump coming back in because I know this to be true. Trump has learned a lot of lessons. And I think a second Trump administration is going to not only raise the stature and the prestige of the United States of America on the world stage, but he's also going to reestablish this strong economy like he talks about. Let's get our energy up. Let's get our energy resources back intact. Let's close the border. Let's unleash law enforcement in this country, especially at the state and local level. Let's let them do the jobs. Let's fix the tax regulations, all the craziness, all the things that you want to hear. But also, I think what they fear in Trump is that Trump is going to, like he's talked to Elon and he's already spoken publicly about this, about some type of government efficiency model that a group of people, and I hope to be part of that, to be honest with you. I actually would think that somebody like yourself should be part of it. I mean, it's probably not something that you're jumping up and down going, yeah, I'll join it. But I think we need leaders who are real professionals who look at our country and say, what's best for America? Not what's best for Trump, not what's best for the Republican Party. what's best for America. And the most important thing that I feel, and I've said this very publicly, the greatest national security threat to our country is this lack of trust between the people and the government. And it is like, it's almost non-existent. And I see it every day. I talk to thousands of people, on a daily basis. I'm getting ready to go to on a tour here to another group of states: Colorado, California, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and I've been doing this for the last couple of years. People don't trust our government anymore, and I don't want to call it. I don't want to just say deep state. There is a Marxist socialist element that exists inside of our government, and I think you know this, and you've seen it. And that Marxist socialist element that is inside the White House, it's inside the State Department, it's definitely inside parts of the intelligence community. It's in the Department of Justice. It's in our law enforcement, capabilities at the highest levels. And so this element that has infiltrated into the body of America at the highest levels of our government, it has created I don't know, like a corporate level of corruption that we just never thought could that we actually would have. I think 4 years ago, after the 2020 election, there was, the media and everything. Yeah, maybe Trump, maybe Joe Biden did win. Maybe he did win, right? I mean, I don't want to get into that argument, but what I believe now is then people didn't realize just how corrupt our system has become. Now people actually are seeing it. And these assassination attempts, Dinesh, are part and parcel to the types of corruption that exists in our country. Now, I'm not going to say that these two assassins, were being led by anybody. But if I were running the investigation, I would immediately take off the table that these were lone wolves. I would say, that's a hypothesis. I want it off the table. And I want you to prove to me that these guys were not led by somebody else. I want to see all of the evidence surrounding their personal lives, their electronic lives, their families' lives, their friends' lives, their communities' lives. So I want that link analysis done. This is my world. This is the world of intelligence analysis, right? This is something that I'm very good at. And you look at that, and if it all comes back that it just doesn't appear like there's any connections, then you bring the lone wolf scenario back on and you go, okay, now we've disproven all of these things. And so now it's looking more and more like this guy acted on his own. But acting on his own, does that mean that he didn't take something that President Biden said or Kamala Harris said or Ocasio-Cortez said or any of these other politicians that are screaming that Trump is a threat? He needs to be eliminated. We can't have him as president. Is that enough enticement by a high-profile figure to cause somebody, a nut, a psychopath, to pick up his rifle, set himself up somewhere, and try to take the president of the United States out? So I want that connection. I want to see if that connection exists, because if I'm the lead investigator and I'm going to be the guy that's going to stand in front of a podium and say, here's why we think this guy did what he did. And I want to be able to point the finger out there into the audience. And I want to say, because of the vitriol that we hear from from people in our government, this is partly why, because we found evidence that this guy was reading all these things, and he had some writings. He had some statements that he made. I mean, that to me is not a lone wolf. That's somebody who is charged by this vitriol that currently exists in our country. I don't want to sit here and say we're turning into a third world country, and I certainly don't want to say that we are a third world country, but we are acting like one in some respects. We are definitely acting like one in some respects. And I know we don't have time today to talk about what's going on overseas, but I'm telling you, the international developments that are happening over in Eastern Europe, Russia talking about a new nuclear policy. The most dangerous thing physically right now is the use of a nuclear weapon. And we have a lot of states right now that have nuclear weapons. And Russia, I don't know what their new policy is, but they put out of their one of their ministries about a month ago that they've changed their nuclear policy because of this, of the way we are operating, the way this vacuum of leadership is functioning over in Eastern Europe, and we're now firing long-range missiles that, the Ukrainians don't know how to operate these things. We're not standing up with our partners in the Middle East, with Israel. We're withholding a lot of stuff from Israel right now. So Israel is fighting for its survival. So those are things that happen when there's no leadership. And I can't sit here, and if I was, put under the gun, I couldn't tell you that Joe Biden is awake at after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, the last time that I saw him do a little gimmick out in front of the White House where he's coming out of the helicopter, he babbled. He was bumbling in his speech. And Kamala Harris, as we have seen, she has no depth of competency at all in any of these big subjects that I just rattled off 20 minutes of, right? So God help us. I think the last thing that I would say, Dinesh, is, a couple things. Number one, thank you to your audience. Thank you for all that you have done for this country. Amazing. I would tell people that now's not the time to, we're in football season, right? Now's not the time to sit and on the bleachers and watch our country go to hell in a handbasket. Now's the time to get out of the bleachers and get on the field. And what does that mean for the American citizens? It means get involved in your local communities. Go out, like my wife and I, we're poll watchers, we're precinct volunteers, as well as all the other things that I'm going around this country doing. So, get behind a candidate. Go find an America First candidate. Go find somebody who you trust and believe in, and go fight for them. We've got 40 plus days, 45 days or so remaining. Get on the field, America. Get on the field and get involved. And if anything else, vote. We can't have a 65% turnout, which is about the norm from 1992 to 2020. The general election for president of the United States, on average, is about a 65% turnout for people voting for president of the United States. We this time around, folks, we can't have that. We are on the edge here of potentially losing our country. And so that means that 35% of people who were registered to vote and could vote decided to just sit it out, decided to stay up in the bleachers. No, and just watch the game, right? No, now's the time. We have got to get out and, grab your neighbors, tell people, and shame them, if nothing else, into voting. But vote. And if your state has laws where you have mail-in ballots, then, do whatever you think you need to do to protect that from any kind of big fraud happening. I know that there's all kinds of grassroots organizations out there that are doing great things in states to protect the vote. And I think that people need to do that. Do it peacefully, do it lawfully, understand, what your state laws are. But I think more and more people are doing that. So this time around, I feel more uplifted and inspired by all these people that I run into, these grassroots people. You inspired a lot of them with 2,000 Mules. The 2,000 Mules movie is just phenomenal, and it inspired people to get involved. And that's my message. So thank you for having me on your show here today.
That's awesome stuff. Guys, I've been talking to General Michael Flynn. Follow him on X at Gen Flynn. The website, flynnmovie.com. General Flynn, what an honor, and thank you very much for joining me.
God bless. Thank you.
I'm now at the point in Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery when he's about to discuss the most famous speech that he gave in his life. This was the so-called Atlanta Exposition Address, a speech to a group of agricultural leaders all over the South, but it was a national event. There were people from New York, from Boston, there were blacks, there were whites. It was a giant event. And the reporting about it, the reception of the speech, the enthusiasm that followed it, some of the criticism that followed it, made Booker T. Washington both a giant national figure, but also a controversial figure. And interestingly, in writing about his invitation to give the speech, he was asked in advance, like, what is your idea? What is your theme? They didn't read the speech in advance. They didn't clear it. Booker T is very clear that this was his speech. It's the message he wanted to give. But he gave them a little bit, the organizers, a preview of what he wanted to say. And I think that this statement that he makes is a very good summary of his philosophy, and it requires a little bit of examination. Here's Booker T. Washington. I tried to emphasize, this is to the organizers of the speech, that while the Negro should not be deprived by unfair means of the franchise, political agitation alone would not save him. What's he saying here? Is he saying, some people would later understand him to be saying, well, it's not important for blacks to vote. He's not saying that. He's saying the opposite. He's saying, while the Negro should not be deprived by unfair means of the franchise. So Booker T knows that there is an effort across the South, led by the Democratic Party, to suppress the black vote. And why? Because the black vote is going largely for the Republicans. So it's interesting how Democrats of that time did not hesitate to do voter suppression. And Booker T knows that, and he's against it. So he says, do not deprive us of the ballot. We have every right to vote, same as you do. However, he says, political agitation alone would not save him. Very important, this use of the word alone, because he's not saying don't have any political agitation at all. He's saying political agitation, by which he means two things. One is the actual casting of votes. You express your views, your values through the ballot, but also through organizing. Through organizing, for example, a rally, a demonstration, a protest. Booker T is not saying do none of that. But what he is saying is don't think that doing that by itself is going to be your redemption. This is his message. And look at what a powerful and prophetic message it is in a very sad way, because in a sense, that is the approach that the mainstream of the civil rights movement adopted ever since. The NAACP was built upon the ideology of a rival of Booker T. Washington, a man named W.E.B. Du Bois. And their slogan, their approach was very much the approach of agitate, agitate, agitate. You could almost say that Booker T's approach is the opposite. It's work, work, work. So the rival approach is demand of others that they recognize you. Booker T's approach, develop your own reputation for honesty and candor and productivity, and you will inevitably be recognized, because the world is made in such a way and human nature is made in such a way that those things are always recognized when they are delivered. He continues, back of the ballot, and by back of the ballot he means in addition to the ballot, alongside the ballot, coming from behind, he, meaning the Negro, must have property, industry, skill, economy, intelligence, and character, and no race without these elements could permanently succeed. Again, this is so carefully written and worded. There's so much thought that goes into it that almost every word needs to be examined. Let's look at the qualities that Booker T. Washington thinks are critical here. Industry. What does that mean? That means hard work, but industry has a double meaning. It also refers to industry. It refers to manufacturing. It refers to industrial enterprises. So blacks need to work hard, and they need to get involved not just in farming and agriculture, but in industrial enterprises. Skill. In other words, Booker T is saying not just manual labor, skilled labor. Learn how to do something in which you are skilled, because the skill is what commands a market value, and it also commands a social respect. Hey, that guy is a carpenter. Hey, that guy runs a pest control business. Hey, that guy's a computer specialist. In other words, this is a person that has risen above the run of the mill because he knows how to do something that everybody else doesn't know how to do. Economy. Economy is another one of those words with a double meaning. Economy means the economy, which is to say the kind of collective earnings and wealth of a country. But economy also means frugality. Be economical, don't waste, build up for the future. And Booker T's point is that when you're starting at the bottom, it's more important for you to do that, because deferred gratification at that point will pay off hugely in the future. Intelligence. In other words, very important to cultivate the mind. We're not just talking about working with your hands. We're talking about creativity. We're talking about building up the mind. And then he doesn't leave out the last and perhaps in some ways the most important, character. So for Booker T, it's not just enough to be smart and creative and be successful. Success for him includes morality. It includes virtue. It includes character. And then he offers this kind of gentle but resounding warning. No race without these elements. Not no race without some of these elements, but no race without all of these elements could permanently succeed. And even that word permanently is very carefully planted there, because what he's saying is, all right, you can go around screaming and yelling and getting people to accede to your demands temporarily. Yeah, okay. But after a while, they're going to get tired of this nonsense. They're going to be like, we gave at the office. They're going to be like, you again? So pestering people doesn't really do the trick. What does the trick is earning their trust, their respect, making them dependent on you in a good way. They need your services. They need what you have to provide. And so what Booker T. Washington is talking about is not just short-term success, but long-term success. That's why he says that no race without these elements can permanently succeed. If you want to be like one of the really successful groups in the world, and by the way, Thomas Sowell, the economist, has done some really good work on this, looking at what groups in the world are successful. And it turns out there are not that many. And they're successful because they follow, even though they come from very different backgrounds, they have different cosmologies and theology. Think about groups like the Mormons or the Jews. Think about the Episcopalians. Think about the Hindus, at least in certain parts of India. Think about the overseas Chinese. These are groups that have success and wealth far greater than their numbers. They are the sort of outstanding groups of the world. In fact, to be honest, you put it all together, these are the people kind of running the world. And but Booker T. Washington's point is why them? Is it that they are just sort of God's chosen people, all of them? Well, it may be true in the case of the Jews, but it's not true in the case of all the others. So the point being that these are groups that develop a certain ensemble of qualities. They are intellectual. They have to do with family structure. They have to do with a certain sense of tribal identity. They have to do with self-help. They have to do with a certain optimism about the future, even in the face of persecution. Think of the way, for example, the Mormons and the Jews have endured a lot, but nevertheless come out ahead. And so Booker T's point is, we are a new tribe. And by we, he means blacks coming out of slavery. And his point is, let's emulate the successful tribes. He doesn't say all this. He doesn't make it explicit, but this is his message. His message is, let us embrace the ingredients of success, but success understood here in its broadest dimension, not just material success, but also moral.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.